All right, so for topic 8.1, we're going to talk about triangles and congruent parts. This won't be too long. We're just going to talk about some basics about what congruence means. So the first thing we need to understand is what that means. So congruent means the same. So that when two things are congruent, that means they are the same. And there's a very important symbol that we use for congruence in math, and it's an equal sign with a tilde over the top. So this is the same as congruence. That's what this sign means. That sign means congruent. So that's a very important concept. Again, it looks just like an equal sign, except it has a little squiggly over the top of it. So now that we understand that, I'm just going to talk about triangles and congruent parts. So, for example, if we have the statement that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, that means a bunch of things. So if I'm talking about these two shapes, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and label them. So this is triangle ABC, and I can label this triangle exactly the same way. If I started with A in the top over here, I got to start with D in the top over here. So this would be D, E, F. I would have to label it that way. I couldn't label it any other way, and these things be true. So when we say congruent, that means all of the parts of the triangles are congruent. So that means this top angle, angle A, is congruent to angle D. They both get one line. They're both congruent. It's just like we were talking about before. If it has the same number of lines, they're congruent. B comes second. So you know B is going to be congruent to E, and it's also in the same location. So we'll put 2 marks there on B and E. B is congruent to E. Next, we know that C will be congruent to F because C is third, F is third, and in the triangle, F is here and C is here. They're both in the bottom left. Then also we know with the angles that the sides are also congruent. So when something's congruent, we know the angles and sides are congruent. So that just tells us that all the angles are congruent. Now we're talking about sides. So we know that AB, this right side here, would be congruent to the right side over here, which would be DE. And we also know that this bottom side, CB, we'll give it 2 lines. It's congruent to FE. And we also know that the third side, AC, we'll put 3 lines there, is congruent to FD. There. The last thing we want to do is name all the congruent parts. So we had this statement here. Then we drew the picture to match. And now we're just going to talk about all the parts that are congruent. So first, we'll talk about the angles. So we know that angle A, this angle, is congruent to angle D. We already talked about that. They both have one line. So angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle C is congruent to angle F. Angle B is congruent to angle E. So we know that those angles, those corresponding angles, are congruent. We also know about the sides. And all I'm doing is basically rewriting everything that has marks. So AB, we know this side AB is congruent to this side, DE. So AB is congruent to DE. We know that BC or CB is congruent to FE because they both have 2 lines. And lastly, we know that FD and AC are congruent. So AC is congruent to FD. So that's all we got for 8.1. It's just talking about congruent parts and understanding how to draw a picture from a statement and then translate that statement into words, which is what I did at the bottom there. So I hope this helped. Write down any questions you have, and I'll see you in class.